This is great. James LeBlanc says, "Hey, Bill, something I've noticed is that many American conservatives, when talking about other countries, dismiss them as lost causes. As a Canadian conservative, I find this very disheartening, as sometimes it seems there's no hope, especially when American liberals interfere in our politics. For instance, Obama sent his campaign team to advise Justin Trudeau in the 2015 election that ended 11 years of conservative government. I get the impression that American conservatives have adopted a defensive stance only to preserve limited government in its heartland instead of exporting it. So my question to you is, do you think that conservatives need to be more aggressive in their networking among different countries in order to halt and reverse the socialism that has affected them in different degrees? Thanks again for your effort. I hope one day all of us can have sane governments again." James, that's terrific. The thing I think most of us have problems is what's this line about other countries? I'm trying to grasp what that means. We are obviously a self-centered people, and that is in many ways bad, in a lot of ways good. First of all, as far as Canada is concerned, prior to 2015, Canada was a better run country than America for many years, and I went up to an event a couple of events in Canada where I basically said, so you've got a freer country than we do. It's a painful thing for me to say, but it's true. And now, of course, they've been seduced by Trudeauism because the Conservatives come in, get the economy running, everyth's humming along, and the second things are humming along, people say, let's pick that fine-looking guy who's got a great smile, and then things go to hell again. First of all, I feel your pain. Secondly, it's a superb point. We have to, I think, look, I've done so much talking, so many live events, so many back and forths and questions and answers, and I realize that one of the big problems, and this is another part of the plan, is the branding. We have to just drop the Republican name, and we should probably drop the conservative name. It doesn't mean you drop the values. It means if you've got a product that has been that badly damaged, both externally by the competition and internally by bad management, then it's cheaper and it's more effective and it's a shorter time frame to start a new brand than it is to recover a brand that is in that kind of bad shape. It can be done. It's a reboot. So once I realized that, James, I realized that having talked about things in front of live audiences many times, I'm trying to figure out what labels make sense. Are we conservatives? Yes, we're conservatives, but we're conserving classical liberal ideas. The liberals are talking about being progressives and going forward. Some of these ideas go back to 150 BC. They didn't work then either. So everybody gets wrapped up in Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, and so on. And none of these really are the issue. And I gave it a great deal of thought, and I'm sure other people have too. And I've come to believe that the only two terms that really are accurate terms throughout history and throughout the world geographically is collectivists and individualists. Those are essentially the two way the human brains are wired. Are you a collectivist or are you an individualist? I know it's drinking time out there, but collectivists are selected and individualists are K-selected. So you have to convince people that individualism is better than collectivism. Now, you would think that would be easy. And it is, if you have any sense of story and you know what you're doing. You can certainly talk to young people and say, how many of you want to be told what to do? And they'll say, none of us. We want to be able to do whatever we want to. I say, okay, well, then the Boston Tea Party, what was that? What was the Boston Tea Party? Anybody know? Well, I'll tell you, the Boston Tea Party was a bunch of college guys who got all liquored up because somebody started charging them for what used to be free Wi-Fi. So they went in and trashed the place. And people laugh, and then they start to understand. That's exactly what it was. We were getting our Wi-Fi for free, now they're charging us? No way, screw that. So you have to convince people that individualism is more important than collectivism. Now, the problem here is that most people would say, I'd love to keep my individual rights, and they don't understand how it's a problem voting for big state people when they've still got the right to do whatever they want to and go where they want to and stay up late and so on. So you have to show them that that individualism is better than collectivism where they're going to apply it. They're going to say, well, what about poor people? What about these hopeless people? And they're right, folks. we've got to come to this realization. What about these people in the inner cities? And we say, oh, just bootstrap yourself up. I did. And I know many people who have, but I also know many people who haven't because they can't, because they're too badly damaged. They never had the parenting. They never had the you want to say they never had the puppy? That's fine with me. It's fine with me. I'm telling you, there are people who are out there who cannot improve their own lives on their own. And so what are fundamentally virtuous, good young people look at these situations with homeless people and all the rest of it, and they say somebody needs to do something about that. And up step the progressives and say the answer is more government. And we just walk away. No, it isn't. And we walk away. This is why we lose and why we're going to continue to lose until somebody puts the plan in front of the American people and says, well, look, this is actually the single most important point of the plan. It's point 5 of the plan, and that is you have to address progressive grievances. You have to address them, and you have to deal with them honestly, and you have to have a better idea than they do. I will try to present this video within the next day or two. They shot this whole thing, but at the Q&A with these kids, and really overwhelmingly, kids, I was speaking the truth to them in a way they've never heard before. You said that Black Lives Matter kills people. Well, why can you say that? Don't you think that's racist? I said, no. Here's one statistic. There's only one statistic you need to know about Black Lives Matter. 2014, 6,095 blacks were killed in America, homicides, and of that 695, 257 of them were by policemen. That most of them were resisting, and many of them were armed. But that's 4%. It's 4% of the total black homicides in 2014 were committed by policemen. So if you're telling me that you're starting a national movement to address the 4%, and you're absolutely ignoring, not just putting in second place, you are turning your back away from and specifically hiding the 96%, then that is, in fact, a political organization, and it's racism. It's racism. You're looking for a reason to attack policemen and attack the structures of society. If I had 96 out of 100 people being killed by one kind of fish, and then I decided to start hunting for the other kind of fish, you'd think I was mad, and you'd be right. So they're not used to it. And then they start saying things, well, what about, why are black people, pulled over more often, innocent black people pulled over by policemen? That's not fair. I said, it's not fair. I agree it's not fair that an innocent person being pulled over more often as a black person than a white person isn't fair. But the reason it happens is because blacks commit so much more crime than whites do proportionately. And the room just, you know what it did? It wasn't like screaming at me. It wasn't like yelling at me. There was a wave through this room. And what I remember seeing most, because when you're in the moment, it's a little tough. But I remember watching hundreds and hundreds of young people turn to each other and just say, I can't believe he said that. I can't believe it. There you go. ATS 608 talks about charity as a solution. Obviously, charity is the solution. Actual charity is voluntary. If it's coercive, it's not charity. It's stealing. When you get to actual charities and you take the needs down to the lowest level, to a church group or a veterans group, you're getting customized service by people who know everybody on the ground, and they're all friends. It's less expensive, a lot less expensive, and it's dispersed, and it's just a lot more effective. But we have to have a solution to these things, because if we don't have a solution to these things, if we do what we continue to do, which is just walk away from it, then we're going to keep losing, because people are kind, fundamentally kind in America. It's just that they're so badly educated that they don't understand that what they're voting for is making the problem worse. This one person got up and read a prepared, it was a manifesto. You talk about how a brain surgeon should make more money than a 7-Eleven clerk. But what about a 7-Eleven clerk who wanted to be a brain surgeon but can't be a brain surgeon because of the structural racism built into the society? And the crowd just erupts into cheers. The cheers are standing up. They're just screaming at the top of their lungs. They're just so proud that somebody has stood up to the conservative guy and laid out the law and laid out the case. How do you justify? What do you tell a person who's black who may want to be a brain surgeon? How does your argument about equality of opportunity deal with them? And I let the room quiet down and just sat there, just cheering and cheering. And just take your time. I want you to make sure you get out of your system. I got a lot of time here. So when it quieted down, I said, "Do you know who the best brain surgeon in the country is?" And she didn't. I said, he may likely is the best brain surgeon in the world. No idea? Okay, his name's Ben Carson. And Ben Carson is a black American. And Ben Carson came from a family that was so poor that they didn't have shoes. Ben Carson wanted to just goof off, but Ben Carson's mother said, no, you have to read for an hour. He didn't want to read for an hour, but she made him. She made him do more reading. She made him work chores as well. She worked a bunch of jobs, got him to school, made sure he did his homework. And Ben Carson is now the best brain surgeon in the country, and he came from nothing. So don't tell me it can't happen. And it's not an exception. Ben Carson is not an exception because he snuck through some kind of bureaucratic roadblocks. If you were talking about this back in 1830, you'd have an excellent case, but we're not in 1830 anymore. Ben Carson did it by himself, and to have that in my pocket handy pretty much shut her up. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is like what I just did there was like a skirmish. It was like a patrol in Vietnam. I certainly don't mean to equate myself with the personal heroism of people in the army, but in terms of what's at stake and how the war is being fought, that was a skirmish and an ambush, and we fought our way out of it. And I think we did pretty good. Took a couple casualties, but we took more of them with us than they took of us, and we converted some people. So this is the battle. It's a battle of stories. Anyway, let's see if I can. I'm sorry. I do occasionally wander just a little bit. So collectivists versus individualists, James, and those people exist all around the world. And you're absolutely right. We need to make this argument international. I think at the first steps we have to make it American so that we can get it in place, but then immediately we start making the case that, look, conservatism works for everybody. It does. It actually does. It doesn't just work for Ben Carson. It would work for anybody in the inner city, and it would work for any 7-Eleven clerk. These ideas actually work. So if they work for me and they work for you, why don't they work for everybody? Turns out they do. They've just never been practiced. And that's when I hit her back with this moral thing. I know you're trying to say, everybody big cheer for you because of how moral you are and how much you care about Black America and all the rest of it. But the fact is, it's your policies, not my policies, that have turned Black America into this cesspit of violence and rage and hopelessness. Not mine. Democrats have been running these cities for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years uninterrupted. Not a Republican mayor, not a Republican council, ever. It's your policies that have made Black Americans suffer this rate of murder and hopelessness and drug abuse because of people like you who stand up and try and tell everybody how good you are while your policies simply destroy this community. And I'm sick of watching it. I'm tired of watching Black people get murdered by other Black people. I care too much about this country and about them to sit there and be willing to put my head down and bow to your essential point of view because you're trying to paint me as a racist. I think the high point of that particular day, which was this last Saturday, was when the guy who invited me is a really great guy named Justin. He's 14, so he's a little gangly, and he brought me here. He was a fan and brought me to be the opening speaker of this 3-day weekend or something. And it's always been very sedate, introduction, talking about government and talking about this and that and so on. We were yelling. People were yelling at the top of their lungs, but they weren't angry. They were morally outraged, which is a different thing. And they were thinking. And my favorite moment personally was this. Poor Justin saw this raucousness and basically got up to the podium and said, now, hold on now, look, I know there's a lot of passions running very high here and everything, but we need to understand that this is a guest of ours and we need to respect the speaker. We need to respect the speaker, so we need to keep it, we need to quiet it down. And respect the speaker. And he sat down, and I went right up to the microphone and I said, I don't want to disagree with Justin, but I don't give a damn if you respect me at all. And the room I don't know what that noise was, but the second I said it, whether you respect me or not, I just don't care. And there's just a sound. It wasn't like anger, it was just shock. It was just this giant collective gasp. I said, no, I'm serious. I don't care whether you respect me or not. I don't care what you think about me, but you better respect the truth. Because we've been talking about the truth, and you've never heard the truth before. And you notice nobody's denying the truth. They're just saying I shouldn't be saying it. I said, this is the truth. And if we're not willing to speak the truth, then we'll never solve these problems, which appears to be fine with you. You don't want to just keep this thing going so you can feel good. You don't want to solve the problems, because if you want to solve problems, we have to speak the truth. If you want to solve Black people being murdered, you have to go after the 96% before you go after the 4%. You can go at both. But I don't care about me. You have to respect the truth. And that got a bit of attention, I think. And I said, and by the way, if you don't respect the truth, you don't belong here. You don't belong in this room, and you don't belong in this country. How can you say that? This moral relativism. I said, okay, you think I'm wrong? Yeah, how dare you tell us that we can't belong in this room? Okay, fine. Quiet down for a second. Raise your hand if your political philosophy and personal belief system is based on lying. Just raise your hand if you believe that serial lying or lying when it's convenient is in fact the way to do business, not only politically, but among your own self. Raise your hand if that's your personal philosophy. Not one. Not one. Not one. And then I said, okay, so you agree. We have to respect the truth in here. And of all the things that have ever happened to me in my career, this was certainly one of the top 3. After it was over, this one young man who I got into the spiciest arguments with, he was literally walking around like he couldn't believe that I could be kind of this stupid. And we went back and forth, and I said, and I don't want to, and if it turns, I was pointing to him, I said, if it turns out that lying is in fact your moral code, then whether or not you belong in this room, I don't want to be in the same room as you. And I certainly don't want people like you running this country. And that got some applause from the good guys. And so after this thing was over, the kids go out into the hall. They're just vibrating and just bouncing off of each other. And I stayed in the front, and a bunch of people came down to say hi. And probably 3rd or 4th in line, I was surprised to see this young man who was presenting this liberal case for all of these things. And I thought, here he comes. He's going to give it to me now. He's going to give me the big, He walked up to me and he shook my hand. He said, I really respect you for coming in here against these kind of odds and speaking your mind the way you did. I've never seen anybody do it before. And I just want to tell you, I really do respect it. And I'm sorry about the language being as harsh as it was. I said, and I apologize if I used language that isolated you either. The entire idea of the country is this here, right now, this handshake. This is the whole thing. It's not about agreement. It's not about lockstep. It's not about one philosophy. It's about this. It's about the fact that we can argue the truth and have passionate discussions about the right way to get there, but we want to get to the same place, and we don't have to hate each other for it. And that's why that's why this country exists. And man, it was a high point of my year, certainly, to have that young man who seemed to me such a lost cause case, champion of progressivism, come over and say, I really respect you and thank you for coming, and I'm sorry if it got a little heated. I certainly didn't mean to insult you. I was like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. Yeah, it was amazing. So yes, internationally is a giant pool of people who want things done as well. James, you're right. And not just existing in Canada. I think all of Europe is essentially going through what America is going through now, which is a revolution against the elitists who tell us to believe things that we know are not true. And they tell us to believe things that aren't true that are true. They tell us these things, and they've been telling us through all of these organs that they've overtaken in 40 years. And not only the American people are rebelling against this. This is what Trump is. Trump is here because Trump speaks the truth. He has so many flaws as a candidate, in my personal opinion. He has so many flaws. And his position on the truth has moved around so much, it makes people like me very suspicious, and I don't have a problem admitting that. But he speaks the truth about things that nobody else does. And that's why he's the Republican nominee, because people are tired of being told to believe things that just aren't true. And the Brexit was the same thing. All of the elites said, no, there's no way this is going to happen. And when it did happen, they had a meltdown. They had a nervous collapse. And they spent the next 2 months trying to convince the British people of the mistake they've made. No, you don't understand. I understand you voted this way, but you don't understand how wrong your vote was. We need to do it again. We need to vote again. We need to try it over. No, this is not the result that we wanted, so we need to do it again. And this attitude is what we're rebelling against right now in this election, and we're going to either get a tourniquet on or we are going to be in big trouble. Time's pretty good.